All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. Oh, this is episode 439 this is kind of the week of June 7th, but really, this has been quite a week. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is that this week is the Summer Game Fest and a variety of showcases. Today we had the Xbox showcase. Sony State of Play kicked it off at the beginning of the week back on Tuesday. And so we are coming to you with a different format tonight. Rather than our normal Enough to Keep Going format of talking about some of the big games we played, some of the news and analysis for the week, and then anything else rounding out our games, today we're dedicating the whole show, a long extended show, as we're starting even a half hour earlier and probably will go even longer. So buckle in, because we got lots to talk about between all kinds of different showcases and streams and so many game announcements and updates and release dates. Not many in November for a little GTA reason, probably. But to talk about it here tonight, I am your host, DBQ Hams. And joining me, as always, is Towmaster99. Tow, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you are here. Very curious and interested on both of your gentlemen's analysis. And our third chair, and always running the boards, keeping us up and running and live, is Game Logic. How are you, Game?
I'm good, man. We got a lot to go through.
Okay, well, let's get going. Game Logic, why don't you stay on the mic and talk about, we're going to start with the Sony showcase, or the Sony State of Play. And I'm just going to take a big drink of my coffee, and I'll let you talk about a very certain game. And Tao got my hint, but Game Logic, you don't even get my joke, because I'm drinking out of a Wolverine cup. So let's start with Insomniac's Wolverine.
Marvel.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Marvel's Wolverine.
Yeah, so this has been a long time coming and was well telegraphed ahead of time. So it wasn't a surprise by any means that it was up. For me, I guess I should preface the first spiel with the notion that tonight what we really tried to do was, like, it's impossible for us to go through everything. And so really this is kind of sort of narrowed down to things that we saw that are like relatively firmly on our list of things that we definitely want to play. And so there are things that I definitely left off my list because I wasn't absolutely certain, right? I wasn't convinced from the various shows, wherever the game showed up, that it was something that I was definitely going to play.
Yeah, I think, thanks for clarifying that. Yes, this is not a comprehensive rundown of everything that happened. There's plenty of other places to go for that news. You could, I would encourage anybody watching and listening to go just listen and watch the showcases themselves and see the games in action. But tonight, yeah, we are highlighting things that stood out to us that we want to pay some special attention to, and we'll definitely be talking about as we play in 2026 and in 2027. So go for it, Game Logic. Let's talk about Marvel's Wolverine.
And this was kind of one of those things, like, this was without question on my list of things that I was interested in, but it wasn't firmly on my list of things that I was definitely going to play. And two of the things, I may not be able to remember the second one, but two of the things that I needed questions answered on, one of which was traversal. I'm like, I love the Spider-Man games. I love Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2. Part of what I love about it is the traversal. And part of what I love about it is also that kind of Ubisoft kind of way of, like, looking on a map and being able to decide what I want to do, because a session of Spider-Man to me is not just going in and doing what I'm told, right? It's picking a night and saying, hey, tonight I'm going to work costume unlocks, and tonight I'm going to work costume level ups and gadget level ups.
Right. Or just swing around the city, right? And just enjoy the mechanics of that game. And so, yeah, I was very curious on the mechanics here as well.
For me, the traversal is not, like, I'm not, like, because I quite honestly feel like the early 2000s, not early 2000s, but the mid 2000 Beanox games, right? The Activision game, Spider-Man games, actually did a fairly decent job of like just letting you swing around a city. So traversal for me in the newer games, like I don't have a night that I just go traverse, but traversal is like part of like when I decide what my task is I'm going to do, then I'm like, okay, then I get to do this really fun traversal going around. So at any rate, my point was I was really unsure. I was like, how are they going to make traversal interesting? And I think a lot of us had the impression from one of the scenes that we saw earlier for this game, which is repeated again here, is they're going to give him a motorcycle because in the comics Logan like has a motorcycle. And at least from the scene where the motorcycle is shown tonight, it doesn't look like it's a permanent part of his traversal right kit. It looked like a thing that he got right to make this set piece scene that was very analogous to kind of in my mind like the Uncharted Jeep chase scene. So I don't know if it's permanently part of his thing or not. At any rate, even when that was shown, I was like, I don't know that like motorcycle as a traversal thing is like a big deal for me. So what was interesting is you saw earlier here in the trailer for our video listeners, in something I talked about this a little bit, that like, when people were saying, hey, Spider-Man's open world, that's the really neat part. One of the really neat things about it. How are you going to make that interesting? They were like, well, this is not an open world game. Wolverine, like the levels, each level is kind of like encapsulated. And what I saw in this trailer was that each level is kind of like an obstacle course, and they kind of provide like launch pads and platforms. It's kind of like a skate park, which is interesting tonight because there's a heavy skate theme tonight. But there's lots of areas for him to go do stuff, to just really be like a gymnast in a for kids, in a what are those trampoline places that they have, right? It's a lot of kind of jungle gym, like each level is like a jungle gym. And so that's what makes traversal interesting. So I was like, okay, I get that. That's a question that I needed answered. Another question that was answered tonight, although I didn't really have a question, but it was neat to see it, is lore. We're all big comic book fans on this show. And so a question was like, when in time is this set? How is this put together? And maybe it's not a bunch of questions that got answered. It was some questions that got answered, and then a lot of questions that were evoked from that, which is also okay, right? In a Marvel game. So we get Jean Grey showing up, and when he first, talks about, that, whoever, he's picking up somebody's scent, and then he finds a piece of their clothing, and it's a redhead, and I'm like, and then you see her, and I'm like, is that Jean Grey? Is that Madeline Pryor? Which Jean Grey is it? Is it the, original Jean Grey that was the Dark Phoenix, or is it the Jean Grey who was brought back from the timeline and is kind of one of the current, like what's going on? So, and that kind of stuff we don't necessarily know, or we don't necessarily know that even matters in this universe. Has this universe been numbered, by the way? I know that they say that this is like, it's basically one version of a Marvel universe, but does it have like a 3-number designation?
Not that I've seen, and it's also, I believe I saw something where it is separate from the Spider-Man Marvel universe as well. So it's not.
Oh, really? I thought I saw that that they were the same.
That was my next question. Yeah, if it was part of that one,
I can't remember. I swear. I mean, I trust that you saw something that said that they were different, but I also feel like I saw something where they were saying. So I don't know. We'll go research that. At any rate, what was interesting as far as the mutant stuff in this. Right in the whatever universe this is, and the stuff that takes place around him, as far as I can tell, the X-Men aren't around, or maybe the X-Men aren't the X-Men yet. It was very super interesting to see Sable and Mystique show up in costumes that were black and gold, and I'm like, well, he's not an X-Men, but their uniforms look very tactical. And I was like, but they're not X-Men, so what's going on? And then I'm like, okay, well, I don't necessarily know at this point that he's not Weapon X, so lots of questions and lots of interesting things going on here. And of course, I am absolutely certain these are not the only Marvel cameos of characters that we're going to see. So at any rate, what this game kind of answered to me was, and it was interesting to see that the principal enemy here was Trask Industries, which maybe we knew before, but I didn't remember right before the state of play. So it was super interesting to see these things, and it definitely piqued my interest and kind of moved this up to like a day one thing that I want to play.
So yes, doing a quick search here, they are in the shared universe, but Spider-Man will not have a cameo. is what I've seen. I would assume, Henry Heck, thanks for joining us. I would assume that yes, there's going to be plenty of Wolverine costume changes. I would think just like there was in Spider-Man, there'll be some unlocks because he's definitely had plenty of different costumes over the years. So,
although I would think of them as outfits, because in my mind, you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, he hasn't had that many costumes. He's had a ton of outfits, but then again, I should say, lots of the spider costumes are things that they have made up, right, specifically for the game. So,
yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm sure. Obviously, the brown leather, fur collared Canadian thing will be a thing. I'm sure a flannel shirt thing will be a thing.
Yep, some bigger wings on the side of a yellow and blue one, or
I'm sure a
Morrison style.
I'm sure a movie outfit will be a thing, like just a straight up black leather kind of thing.
Yep,
will be a thing.
Okay, Tao, as we speculate on costumes, what stood out here for you? Because you have this on your list as well.
Yeah, I mean, I put it more just because it looks cool. Because I'll probably never be able to play it because it's probably not coming to PC. I think they've probably said that already, or at least not anytime soon. And I don't have a PlayStation 5, so I probably won't get one just for this game. But yeah, I mean, it just looks like a really like let loose Wolverine kind of game. And they did show a couple costumes near the end of that trailer that they were just showing. They had the brown and yellow and him as Patch, where he has the eye patch on for Madripoor. So I'm assuming, at some point, I don't know, maybe that's more of story beats. Like you're gonna, you'll change until those costumes, that scene happens or whatever, that level happens.
Yeah, I think there might be an old man Logan costume that might show up.
So, and then like maybe later on, you can kind of just like pick whatever you want, as you play through the game, like after you beat it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it looks really cool. Like I said, I'll probably, unfortunately, never be able to play it. Maybe one day, like I said, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me if by the time we get to year 2 or 3 of the PlayStation 6 that Sony's mining their back catalog for PC releases.
Yeah, and Henry Heck makes this comment. Well, maybe he's got his get up. I guess they threw it on for the sake of sure. Yeah, I mean, so the thing that I'll say is, costumes are put in these games, and you are allowed to put them on, and and you're not restricted in any way that the costume you put on has to make sense, like with the game. So they will put on costumes that are simply throwbacks from an era in the comic books that have absolutely zero to do with what's going on in the game. So yeah, absolutely, it's a costume showcase, which is a thing that I love. Being a big comic book fan.
Yeah, the one thing too, like when they showed Jean Grey and even with Sabretooth a little bit, almost reminded me a little bit more of the movie styles, and even Wolverine, like his Deadpool, Wolverine costume at the beginning there, that kind of reminded me of that. And Jean Grey looks like kind of what's her name? Famke Janssen. I forgot how you say her last name.
Yeah, Famke Janssen. Yeah,
from the movies.
But his Wolverine costume from the Logan one is his original costume from his introduction in the 60s or whatever.
Yeah. So this seems like they're taking inspirations from there, at least a little bit. So
well, a key thing, and I don't think it has a huge impact on this game. I think it's something we'll talk a lot about in the future, but whoever was the guy who just replaced, was it Dan Buckley, who left Marvel, who was the chief of Marvel Publishing and had kind of been the head of the comic book division, solely the comic book division, was just replaced. Just left the company and was just replaced. And the guy who's in the seat now is a guy who now oversees all of Marvel and reports directly to Kevin Feige. So apparently Kevin Feige, I didn't realize this, Kevin Feige was put in charge of all Marvel in 2023. But had never really kind of put his hands into stuff and forced things. And now he has a guy who's like in charge of publishing movies, TV, and I guess apparently they have a music division. So, so it'll be interesting. I suspect that we're going to see even more synergy going forward, which is not always great because in the comics, they've been trying to kind of force the comics to look and feel like the movies, which has not made sense in a lot of cases, but yeah.
Yeah, Henry Heck, Ultimate Wolverine costumes, because you've got the 2000s Ultimate Wolverine with Mark Miller, and then you get the most recent Ultimate line as well, which is a different costume too. So let's move from one third-person action game to another. We're going to talk about the bookends right away on the Sony State of Play, starting with Marvel's Wolverine, but now we've got Sony Santa Monica and God of War Lo-Fi. Tal,
yes.
You want to Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead,
Jen.
Game Logic. I know you have always enjoyed both of the more 2018 and Ragnarok in terms of the God of War combat and stories. What stood out to you here?
Yeah, this was rumored a couple of months ago. We had known that Cory Barlog was working on another game while I forget who the creative director's name is, but he had kind of delegated and put somebody in charge of Ragnarok. And supposedly the rumor was that he had been working on like a sci-fi universe game. It turns out that the sci-fi universe game was actually being worked on by Naughty Dog and was intergalactic. Although I think there was still some belief that Barlog was working on something still sci-fi. But then it turned out we started getting indications of warning that what Barlog was working on was actually another God of War setting game. And it was also rumored that it was the wife, right? That it was Laufey. And so that's what it is. I am super stoked about this. I love the thought and concept that what we will get is something that dives deeper into this convergence and crossover of mythological lore, right, between different cultures and civilizations.
Yeah, right. We get the Egyptian god. We get a Mongolian god in there as well.
Yeah, and that's an additional plus. I mean, the first part of it is just diving deeper into the Norse mythology and how some of that will be unraveled here, because of course in Norse mythology, well, I won't get totally into it because some of that might be spoilers for people who haven't played through the God of War games. But at any rate, it's super interesting for this character, right? Well, I can get it. In Norse mythology, Laufey is the mother of Loki and is a giant. And then, of course, lots of people will be coming to this because I think a lot of what people know, and I think I used to be one of those people, I think a lot of what people know and believe about Norse mythology comes from the MCU, which has been altered. So that is something that you should know, and you should learn the actual Norse mythology. But of course, in the MCU, Laufey is the name given to the king of the frost giants. In actual Norse mythology, Laufey is the mother, and she's just a giant. She's not hyper specific to being a frost giant. And there's lots of things about like who the Aesir are, who are basically the gods we know as the Norse gods, and who some of these other races are. And so this is an opportunity to kind of pull some of that apart. Deborah Ann Wall, I think, is an incredible actress who is now who's been doing crossover work. In this universe, but comes from True Blood, obviously plays Karen Page on Daredevil, impressed the MCU staff so much that Karen Page, who of course in the comics does not survive, but impressed them so much that her character becomes a character that's not killed, right, in the MCU version, partially because of the actress, much like some of the characters in The Walking Dead, who in the comic books die, but in the show live because the actors or actresses are so impressive. She does incredible performances. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her on screen. Jack Quaid, who plays Huey on The Boys, is playing the Cube in this. So, and I suspect that they are not the only tons of star power, I think, across multiple showcases, including what we saw Fable today, which we'll get to. But yeah, this is an opportunity to pull some of this apart. She has a completely different combat and fighting style, lots of air juggles, actually lots of combat styles that I saw that were analogous to a lot of what we see in Insomniac games. Different power set, which I think will play well. Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. Like a great opportunity to kind of dive into a mythological, kind of fictional history kind of looking game and content. So yeah, super stoked about this announcement.
Yeah, I think the combat looks really good, and it looks varied enough from kind of running a very similar same engine as God of War, but is going to have looks like a lighter, faster feel to it, which makes a lot of sense. Tao, you also had this on your list, but again, this is not coming to PC. So what impressed you in terms of this?
Yeah, just first off, like Game Logic, I mentioned, I had Deborah Ann Wall, and I was like, man, I didn't know that at first because I didn't know she had done the voice work for Faye in Ragnarok. until later on when I was kind of researching it, and I was like, wow, she looks really familiar. So I had to look it up, and I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. But combat wise, this was kind of like what I was kind of hoping Hellblade 2 was going to be like, kind of more fast and frenetic, just more actiony than it kind of turned out to be. And I don't know if that's going to be mentioned later, but there was a mention of that in the Xbox showcase. But just basically, yeah, I really like the fighting style and kind of the cam work too, because it's not, you're kind of back of the person, but kind of lower, like you're not like over the shoulder, like up high, like you kind of are in most like third person action games. So I just kind of like the cam work too. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it definitely feels with the kind of house style that Sony Santa Monica has done with God of War. Game Logic, I see that you just corrected the spelling, so let's move on to our next game in Kamuri.
Yeah, I think this is kind of interesting from a present day lore. And so the creative mind behind this is I can't remember her first name, but last name is Nakamura. She is the bubbly, effervescent kind of personality that we saw come on stage in E3 2019 at the Bethesda showcase. Who I don't know if she necessarily introduced, but did a big spiel about Ghostwire Tokyo. At the time, she was a Tango Gameworks creative director, and she had been a protege of, I think, Mikami, the original creative director of the Resident Evil series. And so he was somebody who had kind of personally spent time with her and kind of brought her along through the ranks. And she leaves shortly after that E3 event. Is not there for the actual release of Ghostwire Tokyo, but obviously was a creative director during 90% of its development. Leaves Tango Gameworks, goes off, and eventually opens her own studio, Unseen, and 3 years ago in 2023. And so she's back now with this game. And one of the reasons why this game looks like it's covering similar material to Ghostwire Tokyo, which is this shadow realm of ghosts and things that actually exist in parallel with our own universe, but can only be seen by these agents in our realm who are able to peer through the unseen barrier between the two realms, kind of like in a K-pop Demon Hunters kind of way. It's similar to the Ghostwire Tokyo material because she has specifically said that's my shtick. Like I love, Japanese, kind of mythology.
Yeah, the yokai and
yeah, and that brings me to a similar place I was with South of Midnight, where I said, I'm familiar with that Deep South mythology and the ghost stories and things like that, and it was really awesome to see that picked as a cultural reference to do that game. And so this is doing a similar thing for an Asian culture, and I think that's pretty neat. So I'm looking forward to seeing this game. I loved kind of what I saw of the traversal and the combat style. So yeah, looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I've heard other people, as they've talked about it, kind of talk about it in a Monster Hunter type of way in terms of what it setup seems like. So Game Logic, let's go ahead and stay on the mic as well, because when this next game came, I figured it was going to show up on your list, and that is Ace Combat 8.
Yeah, some friends and I have been talking about this one for a while. I'm sure this is on Swiss's radar as well. And we should mention, the other games that we've talked about before. So Kaburi is a 2027 release date. God of War Lofi has not been dated, I don't think. And then
Wolverine, no, but it sounds from what people have been saying, it is, given that they showed 20 minutes, people are thinking, mid to early 2027.
Yeah. There's a group of us that have been talking about this being somewhere between late February at the earliest to kind of your Memorial Day game, right? So really, which is the same time, which I think was the same time of year God of War 2018 launched. I think that was a May game, and then obviously Ragnarok was in the fall. But yeah, this is on my list. I played Ace Combat 7 I think the tail end of went back through Ace Combat 7 through the tail end of last year. A lot of us have been waiting for this game for a very long time. Even though this is a state of play game, I am most excited to play this game on PC. We see a lot of the standard things here with like the different airframes and obviously things you'll be able to unlock. The story behind this is that, which they do in another segment, I think during Summer Game Fest or maybe Future Game Show. The creative director and I think the art director or the director of the franchise and the creative director of this game did an expanded interview where they talked about a lot of the setup.
Yeah, I think that was Future Game Show. Yep.
Yeah. And so the setup of this is, this Wing of Thief person is which refers to like, what he's wearing on his helmet, refers to this near mythological kind of air combat warrior who's a fighter pilot for this country. But the reality is like it's kind of like a persona that they always have somebody fulfill. It's not really like a real person, right? It's just they keep moving the call sign right to a different person. But this person, this like icon is supposed to be like a national figure, like to inspire their country. And so in the course of this game, you're flying wingman for this person who is just not as great a fighter pilot, right, as this legend is supposed to be. And the person actually gets shot down. And so you are the new thief. It's kind of like getting the Captain America shield, right? Who has to take over for this person. So it's kind of a whole story of like you like dealing with that. So yeah, I mean, I can't talk enough about how much, I'm looking forward to this. Playing it on PC. It has some seasonal content strategy that they're going with it. So, I'm not too much worried about, it getting battle passed up. I'm just excited by the notion that this is going to be a continuing supported game that will continue to get content and will hopefully raise up a community around it that keeps playing the game. And therefore they maintain like the multiplayer. And it's, something interesting for people to get into and stick with.
Nice. Yeah. I didn't know that kind of in the lore aspect of it all. So that's interesting. Okay. Game Logic and Tao, you both have Onimusha, Way of the Sword, which comes out on September 25th on your list here. So Tao, both of you played some Onimusha before, didn't you? Some of the
earlier ones. Yeah, I played early on. PlayStation, I think, first one, second one. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've known about this game for a little while. I don't know if they had a date, like a hard date, for this one before. Yeah.
No, I think this is the first time we get a hard date for a number of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice. And one thing I do want to say on kind of my list of games, not just here on PlayStation for everything. I was trying to go for things that were going to come out this year. Like I had a few games there 2027, but I was always trying to get something that was more going to be within at least the year, next 9 months. But yeah, it's definitely one that is always on my radar. Just when I first saw it, just because once again, like Capcom, like just their animation is just great on this one. It just looks beautiful. Just the animation is super smooth. Kind of reminds me of like when I saw Monster Hunter Wilds, which I still haven't played yet, or that what was it called?
Kitsugami.
Yeah, Kitsugami. It was just like a really fluid kind of animation, and they kind of have it in this game too. And just I'm super excited for this one to come out.
Game Logic, this is on your list as well. Anything here what stood out to you? What looks different here from previous Onimusha games?
Well, the previous Onimusha games were kind of side by side with earlier Resident Evil games, and so the technology was similar. It was a lot of tank controls. It was a lot of very limited on-screen stuff. I don't know if people remember the original Onimusha, but it was kind of like you'd walk in a straight line to the edge of the screen, and then it would kind of page turn, right? It would like you get a black screen, and then it would transition you to the next screen. The next screen might have a monster on it. It might have 3 monsters on it. And then you would fight in that little encapsulated space, right? Then you would move on. So it was very kind of Resident Evil, like you were like in a corridor, right? So this one appears a lot more open, radically different 360-degree fighting style, but all of that same kind of Onimusha like character, and it seems to be going a little deeper into kind of lore, mythology, background, history. Whereas the older Onimusha games were just kind of very kind of you know simple framework, right, in terms of the setup. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what they've advanced in terms of storytelling, with the background and the mythology and all of like the Asian culture associated with it. So yeah, looking forward to it. And like I said, in the combat appears to have, significantly evolved. So
Sounds good. The next game here coming from Crystal Dynamics, which is the Tomb Raider remake. So Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis. We get a hard date here with February 27th, 2027. Tao, you have it on your list here, but Game Logic, you've got it down in the Future Game Showcase. So let's mush those both together, and let's talk about this game. Looks great. We had a little bit of controversy this week in terms of the AI aspect that Crystal Dynamics came out and talked about, that AI was there to help kind of set some things up, but all in-game assets are human developed. So what stood out to you, Tao, or Game Logic, as you were looking at this remake?
Yeah, it looks like it's more just a modernized take on the old school Tomb Raiders of old, like the first couple, or I guess three, really. More maybe puzzly and even more. I don't want to say more actiony, because I mean the other ones are kind of action, but a kind of different action. More of her trying to traverse the world and stuff. Here it looks like it's more like in that scene, more gunplay and stuff like that, and creatures, instead of kind of more grounded in reality. I'll do that in air quotes, from the reboots of the past few games. So yeah, it just looks like it's going to be a fun time.
yeah, and so I'll inject a couple departures based on how the developers are refining it. This is actually not a remake. They refer to it. They specify that in their minds, a remake is you're taking the original game and you are reconstructing it, right? But it's still the same game, right? You're writing it in new code, new engine. They specifically talk about this being a reimagining, and so I put it in the Resident Evil 2 remake and redesign.
That sounds about right? Like it's taking many of those themes and locations, but then kind of, taking a little twist, making it their own.
Yeah, and I think they're even going beyond, right? What they did with Resident Evil. So, the reason this was not on my state of playlist but shows up on Future Game Show is, again, from the state of play, I wasn't absolutely convinced, and I still have as I'm becoming a even older gamer. I am really more and more turned off by puzzles, and I've just gotten to a point where like I'm just going to put the game down, like if it's too puzzly. But it was Lara Croft. I love combat. I love the Lara Croft combat, and I love traversal. And it seems like they've even glammed those two things up. And so after listening to the interview and really seeing what they were doing with traversal, I was like, no, I think I'm going to do this. And if I just have to stop and Google, right, to figure out puzzles so I cannot be bothered, then I'm willing to do that. Which, you guys know, it's got to be a pretty big get in combat and traversal, because I don't like stopping what I'm doing and Googling. But yeah, I'm really, and it looks gorgeous. Actually, the voice actress, Alex Wilton Regan, was actually the host for the Future Game Show, so that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I became convinced after hearing the developer interview in the second show. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if they do similar things that they did in Shadows of Tomb Raider, the third one, in terms of accessibility, where you had a more granular difficulty scales, where you had combat difficulty, you had kind of platform difficulty and puzzle difficulty. And so you could kind of adjust those based on your own individual play styles.
I was waiting for him to drop something like that during his interview, but he didn't mention being able to dial down the puzzle difficulty. So I was just, like you, I was like, okay, if they do that, then great. And if they don't, then I'll just Google it. The one thing I will say that he did mention is he did talk about in this reimagining, in this really reconstruction of the entire kind of Lara Croft mythology, right? In the fabric and the background story. He talks about this story as now being a thing that takes like the reboots, which are now thought of as prequels, right? Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I forget what the second one was.
Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah, he talks about like those are now things that she's gone through before, and now this, which is actually her original story, her first game, is now takes place after those 3 adventures, where she was kind of cutting her teeth. So and he talks about like now he didn't call it this way, but I'm putting it this way in this context. And today, like now she's in like kind of like her 007 phase, right? Like the first 3 were kind of grounded in reality and very gritty. Now it's time to get a little more, I don't want to say campy, but a little more kind of action adventure, kind of, and glam it up. So yeah, it'd be super interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one as well. I think it looks great. Very curious on how it all comes together. So one last one coming out of the Sony State of Play as we hit our getting close to our 40-minute mark already. So let's Tao, this one is Just You, which is Marvel Token Fighter Souls. So this is the Arc Systems Marvel fighting game that was announced and teased early this year and now is coming out in August. And we get a lot more that was shown during, including some more villains, which was shown during the State of Play.
Yeah, so they had announced 3 new villains besides Doom, I think, which we already known about. So we got Carnage, Green Goblin, and Magneto on the Doom side. I guess what do they call it here? Knights of Doom. So it looks, just once again, this game looks awesome. Like I said, it reminds me of the old Marvel versus Capcom. The first couple of games that had come out, back in the day. So I'm super excited for this game. So yeah, just August 6th can't come soon enough. So just waiting on it.
All right, well, let's move off of Tuesday's State of Play and jump ahead to Friday night when Summer Game Fest opening night kicked off with Jeff Keighley and all the announcements that came out of that. Opening the show was, as we had mentioned earlier in the show, we talked about Resident Evil remakes. We get another Resident Evil remake, which was rumored or hoped for at least, and this is Resident Evil Veronica, which originally came out on the Dreamcast and now is getting a remake here. Why don't you, Tao, go ahead and start here? What stuck out to you? What caught your attention around Veronica?
Yeah, I just got a soft spot for Veronica. It's the only second Resident Evil game that I had ever beaten. And like you had mentioned, that I came out originally on the Dreamcast, so I have a soft spot for the Dreamcast. So I might actually pick this one up. Besides the very first, I think Resident Evil was the only other one that I had beaten. Tried 2. I don't think I ever finished that. And I tried 3 also, and just Mr. X was a little bit too much for me, and I just bounced off that one pretty quick. So yeah. So I'm pretty excited for this one, and the Capcom's pretty much knocking it out of the park with all the remakes, reboots, retool, however you want to call it, of late, of the last few years. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for this one, and it's come for Switch too, so I'll probably play it on there. Yeah,
day and date, right? And it looks great. Game Logic, you also pulled it out of on your list as well. You've been playing a variety of the Resident Evil games over the last decade in terms of their more modern platforms here. What jumps out to you?
Yeah, the Switch 2 piece caught my eye. Also, just the way the reveal was done, I thought was like they're just doing a great job with these reveals. The way they did the hoodwink, last year with Resident Evil Requiem, or earlier this year, or this year or last year, whenever they first talked about it. But then this year too, where the trailer's going for like a couple minutes, and then you finally find out at the end that it's Claire Redfield, and that the brother that they were talking about is obviously Chris. So I thought that was awesome, and quite frankly, that kind of tipped me over towards wanting to pay attention to it. I did not play the original Veronica, and lots of times I feel like I don't have to go play like every Resident. Like I didn't play the Resident Evil 3 remake, but yeah, kind of the expert reveal kind of grabbed my interest, and like I said, along with it being on Switch 2.
Yeah. The original with Codename Veronica, it was done well, and they've done such a great job with 2, 3, and 4. So it's great to see this coming as well. Let's move on to another storied franchise from comic books and media and video games. And this one we knew about before, which is TMNT The Last Ronin, being developed by Platinum Games. Tal, you have this on your list.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing shown, obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously. There's nothing shown in the trailer that they had put on there. It's just like an animated thing, uh, and I wouldn't even say animated really, but no, the fact that it's Platinum Games, it kind of got me excited. So and this is a fairly recent comic series, right? Game Logic. I don't know if you ever,
I think
or
this.
even
No, this
DB.
is still. Wasn't it still Eastman and Laird? Like
Yeah,
not current, but it was their comeback.
Last Ronin was. It's been a while.
Oh, it has been a while.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why
Yep.
I thought for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's been popping up lately. I don't know for some reason, whatever. Maybe for the game or whatnot. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited just because it's Platinum Games to see what they can do with it. I'm interested to see if they make it an open world game or if because they're not. I don't think they've really done a whole lot of open world games. They're kind of more big, kind of open areas where you can kind of like bounce around, the enemies and stuff. So
because they're usually with Platinum, they're focused on combat. So
yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see what this game actually turns out to be. So.
And Tao, you're actually right. This is not that long. It was October 2020 through April 22, with some lengthy time between issues because getting Eastman and Laird to get it done was obviously not easy. So yeah.
Huh, I didn't realize it was that recent.
Well, I think that's why in my mind it's not that recent because 2020 starts to kind of get around on the edge of not being recent, but it took a long time to get those 5 issues out. But yeah, it's not Dark Knight era where it's a book. It's getting bad where we have a lot of. We think a lot of these comics is recent, and like some of these comics that we talk about are actually like 80s or 90s.
Fair enough.
To reset the new status quo.
They were new to us at once. Yes. All right. Well, talking about taking a while to come out, Tao, stay on the mic here because Pal World 1.0 is coming out of early access, which went into early access and was released on early access back in January of 2025. So we're coming a year and a half of early access.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just excited. Just CG trailer that they showed, animated trailer with some new pals that obviously not in the game, and some new abilities maybe. Like she pulled, it was like a female character that they had on there, and she pulled out a pal at one point. It was like kind of like a swordfish, and she kind of like broke it in half almost, and like there was like an energy sword that came out of it. So that was kind of interesting. So obviously there's nothing like that has been in like where you could use some of the pals for like lighting and stuff. Even though they don't have the animation for that anymore because of, I guess, the lawsuit. But you couldn't really use them like as a physical weapon before, so it's kind of interesting that you can do stuff like that. But yeah, so it should be pretty interesting. I did see some comments on, I think on the developers Discord, where they're saying like you don't have to like start fresh, but you probably should. So I'll probably be starting fresh. Like I've done it a few times. It's kind of like Minecraft where I'll just start over new worlds and stuff like that. So I'll definitely start fresh and just start from the beginning and just see how everything goes. So, and I've just played it recently, like within the last month or so. So it'll be a nice comparison. Oh, there it is right there. Yeah. So she has that swordfish that she busts out. So that's pretty cool. So it'd be a nice comparison once the 1.0, and it's not too far away, so it'd be pretty quick.
Nice. All right, let's move on to your next game here, which was Gundam Rogue Orbit.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Gundam fan. Like I've probably watched some of the anime here and there, and played some of the games, over the years. But this one just kind of caught my eye. Almost looked like kind of Monster Hunter like, because they show like the Gundam like traversing the kind of this big area. I don't know if it's open world or not, but kind of this big area, fighting kind of smaller creatures. But the majority of the kind of the trailer, and it was pretty quick once they kind of got past like the CG part and got into actual gameplay, where they actually kind of showed them actual gameplay. A lot of it was like kind of just bigger creatures that they were fighting. So it just looked kind of interesting and just a little bit different for that genre, because usually I don't think it looks like they're fighting aliens too, which I don't think was part of the lore, like back in the original series and stuff like that. It was mostly just fighting mechs on mechs before, so it's pretty cool.
Well, you said fighting multiple times, so let's move over to Virtual Fighter Crossroads. Game Logic, you have this one, and Tao, you both flagged Virtual Fighter Crossroads as something that got your attention.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, and I think a lot of people, very unexpected, because it's kind of like a single player campaign that they're kind of doing with this, I believe. I didn't, until like they showed, the little, Virtual Fighter Crossroads actual, wording. Like I thought it was just like a cool action game. So it was just kind of a good surprise. So it looks really nice. Looks really cool. Almost kind of Sifu ish. I thought, as far as like when they actually show the gameplay, where you're kind of fighting in these different areas, and you're just hand to hand combat. So that's what Virtual Fighter's always been.
Yeah, what I suspect is going on here is that they are replicating what Street Fighter did, and they're installing this single player campaign, which
giving you a story mode, basically.
Is a little worrisome, because the more of what I've heard over the last few years is like not a lot of people play that, right, with Street Fighter, that they just play like the traditional, fighter, and some of them do the some of them do the fighter campaigns, right, which are like the little mini stories, kind of a la like the old Tekken style, but not as many people do the creative fighter, single player story. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here, because this doesn't look like creative fire. It looks like they specifically did one person with an expanded story. I'm interested in just playing the whatever, hopefully it's just the regular fighter, and they have like the little vignettes for the fighters. But yeah, this definitely caught my eye, like super, obviously upgrading the tech. It's been a few years, like this is the generation of fighters, right? Tekken came back, Mortal Kombat came back, Street Fighter came back. They have all been excellent. So I'm hoping that this continues the trend.
Yeah, do we have a date on this one? Just 2027, right? Yep. All right, well, let's move on to another one that got kind of leaked, announced earlier in the week, and we've been talking about lots of Forza Horizon over the last few weeks here on Enough to Keep Going. And this next game, Clutch, is from former Forza Horizon developers. So Clutch is coming April of next year. Game Logic, why don't you start here with Clutch, and what stood out to you in terms of the way it seems to be pitched, or the pedigree behind it?
Yeah, and in chat, Henry says that he thinks the World Tour mode is pretty popular. So yeah, for Street Fighter. So we'll just have to see how it plays for Virtual Fighter. Clutch. It's an interesting thing on the landscape, because I've had some pretty significant disagreement with people who feel like Forza Horizon 6 should be in the discussion for Game of the Year. I mean, we've talked a lot on the show how I feel like it doesn't really like move the needle for the racing genre. And if we are going to prop a racing game for the first real time into the Game of the Year discussion, it should be a racing game that does something innovative that moves the needle. In past years, I would have been much more supportive of Blur or Split Second, being prop for Game of the Year, or even one of the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit games that I guess when Criterion took it over, which I thought kind of did some unique things, or newer things. Clutch is attempting to blend. It's really taking the survey sim part of racing, where you get to race a lot of different cars, but it's also blending that across these I'll call them pocketed genres. And by that I mean there was a point where EA with the Need for Speed series said, look, we're going to kind of do, they didn't call it this at the time, I'm going to call it that now because this has come along since then. We're going to kind of do this Call of Duty thing, right, where we have like Modern Warfare, Black Ops, and whatever the heck it is that Sledgehammer does, right? And we're going to have these three like sub franchises within the umbrella of the overall franchise. And they talked about there's going to be Need for Speed, there's going to be kind of your classic, there's going to be Hot Pursuit, there's going to be kind of your classic Need for Speed kind of, when you're talking about DNA from like the high stakes era. And then you're going to have Underground, right? And there's going to be these distinct mini franchises within the umbrella of the franchise. Clutch is taking some of those and really trying to put them in one game. So you're going to get what I like into sports car GT kind of road racing, closed circuit type of racing. And then you're going to get kind of Too Fast, Too Furious, Need for Speed Underground, nighttime racing, right? And that's going to be like a separate circuit, separate mode. Then you're going to have kind of this hot pursuit piece, which is, where the character like gets in trouble and has to kind of do some shady missions. So I'm super excited about like being able to operate in those three different kind of modes of racing. Need for Speed, was it Heat, kind of tried to do this a little bit, but it was still kind of what's the term I want to use? It was still kind of Too Fast, Too Furious racing, like all the time. It was just that there were day races and then there were night races, which, the night races were like a slightly different flavor in terms of the league or whoever was managing them. So this game is it's also trying to do story. And so it has characters, it has a cast, and it's kind of trying to take it back to the FMV era of Need for Speed. But all of it's in engine when this stuff is happening. So I'm super interested. Mike Brown, the former creative director of the Forza Horizon series, this is his team. He asserts that this is the longest time he's had to work on a game. I think what he really means, because he just left Playground Studios in 2023. I think what he really means is this is the longest period of time that he's been like the first engineer on the ground and has been able to work with the game from the very inception and has been able to work on that one game. Because, of course, where he was at Playground Studios, he's probably working on Forza Horizon 4 DLC, right, while he's concurrently trying to get Forza Horizon 5 out there. So I think this is what he's saying. I personally feel like I'm sensing something like special and kind of unique about the team, the development team, and the way that they're working. It's obviously built with a lot of, this is what happened at Playground Studios, and this is Playground Studios after they were bought by Microsoft. This is what I don't want to happen here, just in terms of the culture he's trying to grow. And I feel like I could see some of that coming through. So super excited about this game. This is kind of my game of the show, for everything that I saw during Summer Game Fest. So I'm hoping that it sticks to the landing. It is supposedly out in April 2027. There is kind of a game as a service element to this. So we're going to kind of see how that goes. But yeah, it's coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series, and is, like I said, it's supposed to be out. I've seen more and more references about spring 2027. I'm pretty sure when I saw like the first pre-Summer Game Fest thing that it said April. So we'll see if they're, playing with sliding that around, but at least it should be spring.
Yeah, an April date feels like it could slide to May pretty easily. And
for full release. I'm 99% sure this is going to do some kind of early access kind of thing.
So, sure. Right. Yep. Well, there's plenty of that going around. But yeah, no, I think this looks super interesting and exciting. Tao, you also have it on your list.
Yeah, it's funny that he mentions like Need for Speed and all his past racing games. I honestly thought this was just a Need for Speed, excuse me, that they were announcing, but then it turned out to be Clutch. So yeah, it just looks super interesting. I'm always a sucker for any kind of open world game, whether even if it's a racing game. But the fact that they're kind of trying to put a story into it too, it should be interesting.
Nice. Well, Game Logic, stay on the mic here because we got a couple games coming from you. We've talked about a few other remakes already with Resident Evil Veronica and Tomb Raider. Now we get, which has been announced before, but we get a date for Black Flag Resynced and more gameplay.
Yeah, I won't talk too much about this because I'm watching the clock. So we've all known Black Flag Resynced is coming along. Game looks gorgeous. Supposed to be out July 9th, 2026. Lots of people feel like this is the best of all the Assassin's Creed. It's really kind of a crossover title between the original kind of encapsulated single player, like set piece level by level format, and the branch out into open world. So and obviously has naval combat, which everybody really likes. And apparently they scaled back. Skull and Bones was they felt like they had to do more than just Black Flag to really make that a game, a worthwhile game as a service. And then they said when they went to this, they were like, no, we're not doing all that extra stuff. We need to really make it like Black Flag. So yeah, excited about this one coming out. Definitely on my list.
Well, let's go through the rest of your list here with the next two.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, man, if Clutch was my game of show, this is a near second.
Yeah, definitely hits that same kind of former developers branching out, doing similar, but doing their own and learning their lessons from previous studios. And this is Crossfire.
Yeah, I mean, this is, showing me a lot of flavor of kind of like the Division 2 kind of stuff. As far as like the tactics, puts you in with a partner. I haven't seen confirmation that this is like co-op, but I assume that it is. This also has, again, we're going to be talking about a lot of star power, Hollywood star power tonight. I'm actually in the middle of watching The Boys season 5, and I watched season 4 because I hadn't watched it in the run-up. And this the character on screen that you just saw is voice acted by Claudia Dumit, who is actually the wife of Jack Quaid, who we talked about earlier, who is going to be the Cube in God of War Laufey. So, yeah, and of course, she also played the character Farah in the Call of Duty Modern Warfare reboot. So, yeah, looking super forward to this game. The developers came out on stage and were very emphatic about this being a single player narrative, cinematic, heavily story driven, like clearly taking shots at game as a service type of stuff. And I've become one of those hybrid gamers who enjoys both. But this is, but I definitely appreciate how things that come along where everything's not game as a service. And I'm really stoked about this title. And the voice actors right going into it. So apparently, I think the guy was on the 100 and has been on some other stuff that I'm not as familiar with his work. But yeah, I'm looking really forward to this one.
Nice.
DB, real quick, you mentioned these were former devs. What were they? What did they work on previously? Or Game Logic?
They are devs from Naughty Dog, and I want to say Call of Duty. So it's a really interesting mix, right, of the two, like some of the favorite story driven stuff that gamers have played recently with some of the favorite combat driven stuff, and even first person shooter campaign stuff, right? And you talk about the Modern Warfare games being some of the favorite story driven stuff for the Call of Duty campaigns.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know that it was Call of Duty. I don't remember which studio or if it was named, but.
Yeah, it was definitely Naughty Dog. Was one of the former studios. So if I heard Naughty Dog and you heard Call of Duty, then yeah, that marries up with what we think the background is.
Well, I double checked that. Why don't you talk about your next game?
Yeah, the next game was kind of a weird. I need to look at the agenda, make sure I'm on the right thing. Yes, I am. So this was kind of a weird pick for me. I actually did not know what it was, where I kind of hit that point where I'm watching the trailer and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely in on this. And this scene that's opening here is the thing that caught me. This beautiful, right, from an art and a graphic implementation and fidelity perspective tram scene, futuristic tram scene, is what it opens with. This is Stellar Blade Blood Rain. Of course, I did not play the original Stellar Blade because I felt like its advertising emphasis was on eye candy and not on game mechanics and gameplay. I hear from many staunch supporters of Blood Rain, of Stellar Blade, that it's a great game mechanically. I just wasn't interested from kind of the stuff they were putting in your face. This game looks incredibly gorgeous to me, and so that was the first thing that caught my eye. That there are some other things that I'm going to keep an eye on as it goes throughout the development and kind of see if it's on the up and up. This game is coming to both PlayStation and PC because the developers wanted to put it multi-platform, or at least on multiple platforms.
Which is what Stellar Blade was as well.
Stellar Blade eventually goes to PC.
Yes.
This is supposed to go to PC and PlayStation day and date.
Okay.
And then her fighting style and her power set I'm just like, oh yeah, it really hits me squarely with the type of stuff. A lot of what we're talking about tonight is fluidity, right, and traversal, and fluidity in combat, and we've seen a lot of that in games. I'm glad to see games making that a priority, and we're seeing that here, right? So yeah, I'm very stoked about Celebrated Blood Ruin. Just hope that it stays in the vein of and on the rails of the stuff that I want to see.
Nice. And as a fact check for Crossfire, it was Naughty Dog and Infinity Ward, former devs. So since we just hit our 1 hour mark, I'm going to wrap up the Summer Games Fest opening night just with 3 games that stood out to me. Star Wars Zero Company, which we knew about, and we know that it's coming this fall. It's, I enjoyed Marvel Midnight Suns. I'm trying to remember. Yep, Midnight Suns, which was the Firaxis game. And so Marvel XCOM has sounded interesting since this was leaked and then announced. Gen Atlas, which is the next game from Ueda, the Shadow of Colossus and Eco Last Guardian game. We got a little bit more here, but again, I'm not going to hold my breath on that one because it's still quite a ways off. And then finally, a quick little game coming from the Cuphead studio. They announced that they're working on Cuphead 2, but then also announced a little 8-bit game, Mighty Cuphead Adventures, which looks very much in kind of a Nintendo 8-bit, in the between style of not quite a bigger color palette than you get on Nintendo, but not quite a 16-bit, but a side scroller action game, which caught my eye. My son and I were talking about it today. Real curious on how punishingly difficult it will be, given that it's coming from the Cuphead developers. So let's move off of there and into future games. The future game show came up as well. We all have a few games here. Game Logic, I'm going to let you get started as I refill my coffee.
Yeah, it won't take long. I'll just run the list. AGX GP or AGX Grand Prix. If everybody's familiar, kind of on PC, there's kind of been, over the last 5 years or so, maybe 8 years or so, there's just kind of been this renaissance of anti-grav racers on PC. We've had Redshift. I should say across multiple platforms. We've had Redshift. We've had Fast RMX and RMX on the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2. And then even if you go back, there was the Wipeout collection that I think was on PlayStation 4. And so, the genre's kind of, gotten a little bit of kind of slow burn in heating back up. And so this is another thing in that space. Again, just high graphic fidelity, it looks like. And so I'm looking forward to it. Then there was Clive Barker's Hellraiser Revival 2026. This is a game that we've heard of before that I had no interest or intention on playing. I've never been a big, follower or fan of the Hellraiser like content trilogy, whatever. I've never sat and watched any one of those horror movies like all the way through. I think I've seen, I've sat for like a chunk of one. But I, was never interested in it. Clive Barker's Undying, however, is one of my favorite video games of all time. And when I sat and listened to the developer interview for this, he really talked about the study of the, human spirit, right, that they're delving into with this, and the way that they are hyper focusing on the mythology of the original Hellraiser movies and not paying as much attention to anything that came along. Because I think there were some Hellraiser movies that were not done by Clive Barker as the thing went on. I know there were some, I think, direct-to-video type stuff. And he's like, yeah, we're just putting blinders on to like that stuff and any fan stuff. And like, we're really, and the way he articulated it, it was a very, very, very deep dive, specific, precise, and accurate horror-tied tale of, what goes on with the human spirit when for a lot of us, a lot of us who, obviously all of us are with sin, right? And so for most of us, we hope that the approach is sin is something that happens when we fail, right? We set a high bar, and then we have these, instances of failure. What he talked about is that, these are humans, and I think this is part of the Hellraiser mythos too. These are humans who know, like, depravity is not when they fail. Depravity is what they seek. So they actually have a low bar, right? And that's the way they want to live the entirety of their lives. And there are times that they have to function as like normal human beings is actually a departure from their norm. But he talks about like when you are in that lifestyle and then you realize that you've screwed up, right? That it's gone too far. And, and what happens in this is, they get so far down this lifestyle that, Pinhead and his troop, the Cenobites or whatever, seek them out. And then, I guess steal the soul of his girlfriend. So he's like, I mean, it's kind of actually like to a certain extent a story of repentance, right? And like what he has to do to make up for and like get her soul back. So that sparked my interest and caught me and brought me and is bringing me along for the ride. So again, we'll see if it sticks to the landing. Again, this is where I have Tomb Raider, Legacy of Atlantis, gets on my list after seeing it the second time. I didn't buy it the first time. And then Exodus and DBQ, you also have this on your list, right up there, probably, number 3 in my game of the week. Great Scott, man. If this game sticks to the landing, quite honestly, and it's an early 2027 game, if this game sticks to the landing, everything just needs to move out. Like everything's going to move. Like if it sticks to landing, I can't see this game not being game of the year next year. It hits all of the drum beats of Mass Effect. It hits the scariest thing about it is the scope is incredibly broad. And so I don't know how long this game has been in development, but I don't even think I could describe it in a single sitting because there's so many different things to describe. It is Jedi Knights, it is Technomancers, it is like Mass Effect, it is going across the cosmos, like so it's a little bit of Starfield, maybe going across the cosmos, trying to find this lost culture. DBQ, I'll hand it over to you.
No, that's okay. I think it's a game that piqued my interest and my dog's obviously interest when it was announced, and we got some early shots of it. I think even last fall at the Game Awards, last holiday season. Yeah, I mean, I'm always down for something Mass Effect like a big space opera, a big kind of world building. This feels like the start of a new IP with multiple potentials for it. If it hits, as you said, I think there's lots there to be excited for. So yeah, I'm very interested in seeing how Exodus lands.
And the last thing I'll mention, anyway, should have mentioned this on Luffy too, right? So there's a handful of games that maybe we should highlight and point out if we can remember. You guys mentioned it with Luffy, right? 20 minutes of gameplay. There was no shucking and jiving. There was no smoke and mirrors. There were no kind of like cute clips of flipping back and forth between CGI, and like it was 20 minutes of like, this is what you will see in the game. Same thing with Exodus, 20 minutes of just full on gameplay. So hopefully that's high confidence. It means that the game is fairly well along. So
yeah, right. We're not just getting a little cross section to show. So Soldier for Life, thanks for joining us. We are making our way through the Future Game Show now. We did hit a little bit on Wolverine at the beginning. We'll hit on Gears E-Day toward the end of the show, and we'll pick up your question at that point in terms of as we talk about exclusives. So I'm going to hit a few here. And Tao, looks like you jumped on with Duskfade and Finding Echo. So these are two games that stuck out to me. Duskfade is just a 3D kind of action adventure platformer. It's coming out in August 13th. Duskfade is coming. Very much has kind of a PlayStation 3 kind of Zelda-like feel to it, with a little bit of action combat. And then Fading Echo is coming out next month in July, which is a little more artistic in terms of 3D action combat, but also you end up with kind of having some souls or a companion that can take on different elements, it looks like. And there's there's a demo of it out now, so I'm going to give that a try, and we'll be talking about a number of these smaller games that have demos out on Steam. So those are two that popped up to me. The third one was Wheelmates, which was described as It Takes Two mixed with Hot Wheels or RC racers, right? Like, I like the idea. I enjoyed playing, those. It Takes Two. Last year we talked about Split Fiction. Had to think about that name for a minute there in terms of that studio's games and the idea of driving around and solving puzzles or platforming with RC cars. Seems like it could be some good couch co-op fun this fall and in the holiday season. Tao, you had a couple other games here, but since I had mushed together Dusk Fade and Fading Echo as 3D platformers, which one kind of caught your eye?
Yeah, I was looking more into Dusk Fade just because of the platforming aspect. I haven't really played any platformers, I don't think, for a while, like probably since Mario Odyssey. So that one kind of just caught my eye. Kind of reminded me of not that I've ever played these games, but just in style, like Ratchet and Clank and all those kind of games.
Definitely felt like some Ratchet and Clank in there. Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
So it looks really cool. Yeah, definitely want to check that one out.
Well, we talked about Hellraiser, and now you've got Halloween the game on your list.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting because I think I'd heard about this. It's another asymmetrical type game, kind of like Dead by Daylight. One monster creature against 3 or 4 people. So that's this game too, Halloween the game. The studio also did Predator Hunting Grounds and Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is basically the same thing, just another asymmetrical games. But the other thing that kind of caught my eye with this one, they have a single player campaign where you actually play as Michael Myers. So from him kind of escaping the hospital, kind of, I don't know if they follow the movie like after that point, but they actually, during the kind of trailer, they had the I don't know if he was a policeman. I never watched Halloween movies, but as the kind of the older kind of bald gentleman, I don't know if he was a cop or a detective or something, or what his kind of stake was in those movies, but he's kind of narrating, kind of the single player kind of trailer, just talking about Michael Myers. And I just thought that was kind of interesting how, kind of flip the script and, you're playing as the villain, basically, kind of going around the town and taking people out. So I just thought it was kind of interesting to see something like that.
Why don't you just stay on the mic and keep going? You have 2 other games here, Realm of Ink and Skatester.
Yeah, Realm of Ink actually is already out. It's a roguelike, but it was kind of the art style is kind of like that ink.
This caught my eye as well, and I didn't even realize it was out, and so I had to go look it up.
Yeah, it looks like the 1.0. I guess it was in early access. Speaking of early access, so 1.0 just came out, I believe, like a week or 2 ago. So, full release is out. Another roguelike, it's like Hades or those kind of type of games. But I've been getting into those type of games now. So, and it just like the art style itself, which is kind of cool. Kind of that brush stroke, paint style, and just 1,000 things going off at once. And as you get more powerful and just enemies coming at you. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And then the last one is Skatester. I'm not even sure how to pronounce this game. Just kind of old school, almost Tony Hawk like kind of skate game. Looked like there's a bunch of customization. I'm not sure if you only play as a female. She was kind of the main character they showed. But even when they're
she's an influencer, social media person. So I mean, I guess that makes sense. It seems ripe for DLC characters or things like that as well.
Yeah, but it's just kind of the Tony Hawk kind of, that kind of fast, frenetic, jumping from a bowl to, like grinding on things and then jump, do manuals all like in quick succession. So it looked like a pretty fun time. So definitely looking forward to that one.
Nice. So that wraps up for the future games. And we're going to, before we hit the big final showcase with Xbox from today, we're going to do a little bit of cleanup on some of the indie showcases that happened over the course of the week. There's a ton of them out there. And I got a chance to watch many of them, usually on 2-speed, in order to get through them quickly and slow and pause and slow down to go back to something that looked interesting. So I would just want to hit on a few, and Tao, you've got some in here as well. So in Game Logic, if any of these if you got a chance to catch up on any of these or have other thoughts, feel free to jump in. I appreciate you grabbing some links to show as well. So the first game, Black Voices in Gaming Showcase, was one of the earlier showcases, I believe on Thursday. And one that stood out to me was Black Sailors. So this is a development team from Brazil, and it is a turn-based sailing strategy game where you kind of set you take your turn, you take your actions, and then click run basically and let them play out on the water. And so it's a strategy game. The narrative around it is, to me, feels really unique and interesting because it's not a culture that I have a lot of history knowledge around, but it's set at a time in Brazil during the slave trade, and it is basically a slave revolt and a pirate revolt. So they become pirates, not based on any one historical figure or any historical figures, but based on historical facts, where they've created characters based on historical events and cultural situations. So people that could have existed, or they've worked with a historian even in Brazil in terms of setting up the story behind it so that it fits within kind of historical fact, even if it is kind of so basically it's a historical fiction video game. And it looks really interesting. Again, a strategy game, which is great. Rogue Eclipse is a total different game. It is it's a action, a 3D shmup that you're moving around, like you would be flying in No Man's Sky or someplace else. Kind of low, bright visuals, but kind of low aesthetics in terms of very stylized, but it's a roguelike. And so you're kind of moving through this 3D space in a shoot 'em up environment. Looked really interesting and kind of fun as an arcade game. The other game that stuck out to me, and they spent some time with the developer, was Roller Girl. And so this, especially after coming off of Mixtape, Roller Girl is much more of a narrative and very music focused. And one of the things they talked about is how the music that you choose in your playlist as you're moving around the world changes the world environment. Or like a sad music will make it rain, and nighttime versus daytime, and a pop music is going to give you a bright sunny day. And it, after coming and playing some Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, they do a little shtick and a joke in there right away in the beginning where Alfred says, welcome back to Gotham, Master Bruce, and puts in music and it's all poppy and everybody's happy, and then he realizes he put on the wrong side of the tape and it becomes more metal and rock, and it's more what you think of as Gotham. And so this game kind of plays with that idea as well, of having the music kind of change the mood of the game, which is exactly what music does for us as humans. So I like that idea. Tao, you got a game on here that I almost put on my list, and then I was glad to see that you put on your list. And it's actually coming out on the 10th of June as well. And so this is the follow-up from Beatdown City. And so this is Beatdown Survivors in a survivor-like game.
Yeah, so in the vein of Vampire Survivors and numerous Survivor games that are coming out now, a lot of them which I've actually started playing again, so it's stuff I'll be talking about here probably next week or so. But yeah, Beatdown City Survivors, roguelite brawler, kind of a la maybe like Double Dragon, kind of almost the characters kind of look like kind of little bit super deformed kind of characters, but you can customize them, you can upgrade them, and then you just go out to the city and there's waves of creatures and stuff, and enemies that you have to beat up, and you can use the environment to your advantage, like electrify or water, or just start a fire from whatever's in the area. So look pretty cool. I don't think I ever saw the original game, so I just thought this was kind of cool and interesting take on it.
The original game was kind of a pixel brawler. I played it on Switch, came out 2019, somewhere in there. Very enjoyable. So I was glad to see this there, that studio's doing something more. So I'm going to hit the Latin American Game Showcase. A couple games here, just a quick hits. Bulbous Belief System, which is coming out this fall. It looks like kind of a puzzle platformer, but very much kind of logic based. And so the idea is you're this character that based on how you respond to questions or remove things from sentences will change the game logic that you are moving through. So if Bulbous doesn't believe in gravity, then he floats. And so it's kind of thinking about kind of it's very much kind of logic puzzles in terms of language and moving it within a game system. So I thought that was a creative use of that concept. Another kind of puzzle platformer game is Colorbound, which is coming out in August. Hello, Hero Down Under. Glad to have you here. Colorbound is a puzzle platformer where you're using color to create different platforms and kind of make your way through. And the final game that stood out to me here is Tempest Vitae. Tempest Vitae or Vita is coming out next year. It is a time travel first-person action game, time manipulation. And so a lot of it is kind of doing certain actions and one period and either rewinding or jumping ahead in time to navigate the kind of space station, very kind of sci-fi look to it in terms of what it's doing. It's also being developed by let's see who it is being developed by. Whiteboard Games, who co-developed a game that just came out this past week, which is Beat the Champions, which I had never heard of until seeing it on one of these showcases. Soccer game, kind of arcadey soccer game, which hits right about the same time for World Cup and is on my wish list now and out on Steam. Steam and Switch. So one that I'll probably be talking about later in this month. The women-led game showcase, a quick couple here. 13Z, which is Hades-like action roguelike. Lucky Punk is going back to the skater aspect that it is. Wait, there's a different game. That's a skater one. So many games, trying to keep them all straight. Lucky Punk, thank you for the video game logic. Lucky Punk is a card battler, kind of a strategy game here, but the way they described it is all the random chances are not random, and so all the results, but you don't necessarily know what the impact of those are going to be. And so it's a card battler roguelike. There's been lots of those, as we've seen. Another little game that showed up on my list that I thought was interesting is Short Fictions. Short Fictions, the framing device is that these are little video game cartridges that you're putting in a handheld and playing through in kind of early 80s graphical styles, but all little narrative games, jumping between as you jump from cartridge to cartridge. So taking that, idea of something like UFO 50 with lots of different games, but narrowing that down in terms of just little narrative adventure games to kind of mix and match from. Next up, we had speaking of mix, we had the Mix Summer Showcase. So Tao, you got a couple games here from the Mix Summer Showcase.
Yeah, so sorry, I was kind of jumping around here. First up is Monsters Are Coming, which is a mashup of tower defense and roguelite. Kind of almost the reverse of Ball Pit, where in Ball Pit, the enemies are kind of coming down towards you from the top, down to the bottom of the screen. Here, you're kind of like in a mobile base, and the mobile bases are going from the top down, and you're trying to defend that base, so you got to upgrade it. And, different defenses, but then also yourself, you have weapons that you can use to fight off all these monsters. So it's just kind of a cool mashup of these two genres that I'm kind of getting into as of late. So looks pretty cool. Next up is Polyfighter, which is once again, this is a roguelike, not roguelite, fighting game. It's coming out, just coming out soon, so sometime this year. I think there's a demo out on Steam right now, where basically, just your normal 3D fighting game, but obviously you can, as you get defeated, you can go back and pick different power ups and stuff like that. I don't want to say cards, but they basically give you three choices of different kind of powers and stuff. So and that's just single player, which I thought was kind of interesting. There's no kind of multiplayer in that game. Next up is Sailbreakers, so a 3D rogue light brawler. This one is, well, they say it's a melee only, but then as I was kind of researching the game, like at one point he kind of does like a Hadoken, he shoots out this beam from his hands. So maybe a little bit more than melee, as you kind of upgrade, and there you go. Yeah, and then you can use the environment. You can pick up tables and barrels and stuff. So, but obviously you can get, as you progress, you get different combos and just different fighting styles and stuff like that. So it looks like a pretty cool game. And then last one, Edenfall: Legacy of the First Wardens, which is a 3D kind of action adventure game. You play as this girl kind of going across this world, but you can actually morph into different animals, a wolf, raccoon, and a raven. So you can kind of, and they all have their own kind of abilities and stuff. So, but the kind of neat thing is you can kind of, you morph in kind of real time, so you can kind of like do combos with the different forms. So as they kind of show here, I think later in the trailer they kind of show as she's fighting the boss, she's like jumps into the raven, hits it or whatever, and then goes into the wolf and does like a special and stuff like that. So that, like, kind of interesting, and I guess kind of Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda kind of gameplay as of late. So but yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. And that's sometime quarter 4 of this year. So I think all these games should probably come out this year, but we'll see. Since I think Edenfall is probably the only one that had an actual, so at least like a window of. Actually, it looks like Monsters Are Coming is coming out November. Actually, looks like that one was out already. So maybe that was coming out to consoles. That's kind of weird. I don't know why they showed that one. So. Monsters Are Coming is on PC already, so maybe it's coming out to consoles too, coming out this year. But yeah, those are the games that caught my eye for the mixed showcase.
Edenfall looks really interesting. I hadn't seen that before, so I'm going to jump over to the India game showcase, and just a 3 games here that stood out to me. The first one is, I'm going to apologize upfront for however this is supposed to be pronounced, but Akiam is kind of, it's a RPG, has combat kind of in a similar style to Paper Mario, which always kind of gets me in terms of some kind of turn-based, but also kind of timing-based, and the kind of cute, kind of toy-like aspects of the character designs. Definitely found it pretty interesting, and going to keep an eye on that as well. Another one is Project Fox. And so Project Fox is an action game. It is a kind of anime, kind of combo heavy, but they talk about it as a twin stick shooter, but a hack and shoot, as it just said there on the screen, right? The movement of a twin stick shooter, but with kind of a heavy kind of melee combat aspect to it. So looks pretty interesting. I like the graphical style, and it seems like a perfect Steam Deck game of kind of pick up, play a little bit, put down as well. So that one was Project Fox. And then finally the other game, which I was excited for because I loved the original, this is Raj Kalayuga. And so Raj was a isometric 3D action game back in maybe 2019, sounds about right, and much kind of Indian art style. And this is kind of full-on 3D models, and the graphics look pretty impressive for the studio. And so it's continuing on with the character. Takes place a few years, I think it said 6 years after the original game. So It is. I was surprised and glad to see that developer continuing on with this game and the franchise. Moving over to
real quick, sorry, I just jump in. Yeah, I didn't realize that one was the continuation of that original game. I actually started playing that one on the Switch, I think, a couple years ago.
So yeah, I remember we both. I mean, we've talked about it. Yeah, a little bit of puzzle solving.
Yeah, this new one looks like, I was like, wow, looks amazing.
Yeah, so. Considering the original one looked very much like a small team and kind of a lower res kind of graphical piece, but this is full on 3D. The lighting looks good. It looks really interesting.
Yeah.
So moving over to the Shack News E4 Indie Showcase, just two quick games here. One is Killer Aces. Killer Aces is a 6-on-6 volleyball game. And the reason this stood out to me is it's by the developers of Sunday Rivals. Sunday Rivals is an American football game. Kind of plays almost like Blitz back in the day. NFL Blitz, where it was that over the top kind of arcadey action. And so to see that developer take on a different sport, I was very, very interested to see Killer Aces. And the other one is Ember and Blade. Ember and Blade looks like kind of a Hades-like, but talks about itself as Survivors-like. And so it's got kind of a Hades isometric art style, but in a Survivors aspect in terms of kind of auto firing and things like that. So moving over to New Zealand, moving down under, let's say, to New Zealand. Hello, Hero Down Under. Talking about the Frosty Game Showcase here. A couple of games that stood out to me on the Frosty Game Showcase. One is Canvas City. And so Canvas City is tactics, turn-based strategy RPG, but kind of set in a punk futuristic world where it kind of has the aesthetic of things like why can't I think of it? Jet Set Radio and that type of aspect there. So Canvas City coming out. I believe there's no date to it yet, but very much in that kind of Jet Set Radio kind of aspect, but again, a strategy RPG, which I'm always game to see how people play around with that. Echo Zero was another game that I thought looked really interesting. It looks and plays like a hand-drawn animated Contra, but is procedurally generated and with multiplayer in it as well. So I thought that the Contra mix with procedural generated is not a mix that I had seen before. So interested there. And then finally, Box Night. Box Night is a game that has a cartoony art style, but is a roguelike brawler. And I've played a number of roguelike brawlers and enjoy that combination in terms of making your way through a side scroller beat 'em up and having it be kind of roguelike as well. Finally, two games that I thought looked really interesting and coming out of the Pride Parade showcase. Which was they describe it as a mix of Akira and Metal Gear Solid, and it definitely feels I could see those inspirations. That's Seraphim Helix Experiment, SHE. The art style is in that kind of the developer when they were on was talking about looks like in a PlayStation 2 kind of art style. They talked about Raiden and taking inspiration from Metal Gear Solid 2 and Raiden's experience and gameplay there. A little bit of you're in military complex trying to figure things out as you would within Metal Gear Solid, but a lot of it is kind of body horror, kind of human experiment types of things that it looks like. The other one is a total different change of of context and palette, and Cute Patoots. Cute Patoots is it looks like somebody took Kirby and mashed it up with Mega Man. And so you've got kind of a Kirby action platformer where you can take on other powers and abilities, but then having some kind of Mega Man, both in terms of combat and also in terms of some boss battles and things like that. So that was Cute Patoots. Looks like a neat kind of retro game and a mashup of styles there as well. Anything else from the variety of indie showcases? I was telling my wife, like, I love the fact that there's been so many showcases, and like there always are a ton, but it just provides such a variety of games to look at and get a sense of, and multiply my Steam wish list by significant margins as well. Anything else in the showcases that you caught on and off throughout the week, gentlemen, that we want to hit before we turn the page and talk about some Xbox?
No, unfortunately, I didn't get to look at all of them like I usually do, just because I was so busy. I did kind of scroll through the Wholesome, excuse me, the Wholesome Direct, but I didn't really see anything that really jumped out at me. It was a lot of little too cute patoots, as you want to call it. They're just too cute games like out there. Like I was like, it just didn't really, nothing really hit for me. But there's usually something out there that'll come out eventually that that'll hit. But I think that second half of the directs that you went through, like I unfortunately just didn't even get the chance to kind of go through. So I did the one that you had mentioned earlier, though, the Killer Aces. I think that was the volleyball one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That one I actually saw, and that looked pretty interesting. So yeah, I'll definitely check that one out.
Yeah, the developer did a great job with their football game. So I'm, their sports physics, it's definitely more arcadey, but I would prefer that to having a lot of investment in collectible cards and everything else with modern or VC and all the other trappings that come with modern sports games from high budget studios. All right, well, let's move to a big high budget studio, and the final one for our show tonight is the Xbox Showcase. Lot was shown here. We got some dates. We got because this is our last one here and it just happened today, we haven't really had a chance to kind of dissect the general show itself. Any quick takeaways, gentlemen, in terms of, Xbox has gone through, has been in the news for the last 2 months or so around, whether it's leadership changes and price changes and a variety of things. How do you feel coming out of the Xbox Showcase? Do you feel like it hit on the beats that you were hoping for, or actually probably even more of a question, Game Logic, do you feel like it hit on the beats that it should have as a business?
I'm really not considering the Xbox Showcase from that perspective, just because like they are where they are in the industry. And I think a lot more volume is spoken about them, and a lot more attention is pointed in their direction that is not commensurate with where they are in the industry, like far too much. Blessing on Kind of Funny Games Daily this week, not Kind of Funny Games Daily, but on I think on the Gamescast where they did the prediction show, kind of articulated it like it's like for years we talk about like these showcases being 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, and then the deliveries aren't commensurate, right, with that.
Sure, right. You can make a good announcement, but whether or not it comes to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, Starfield, right? Showcase, all types of stuff about the showcase. Game hits, and the game is not game of the generation. It's kind of an also ran. Forza Motorsport 2023, lots of hoopla about the showcase. I talked about how that game looked like it was coming in hot, was in trouble, and the game's not a great game. Forza Horizon 6, great game, but to me doesn't move far beyond the design framework of Forza Horizon 6. So I've kind of like firmly decoupled, right? The notion of the showcase from where the business is. And I just look at the showcase to see, do games come across that I'm interested in playing. I do want to ask, the question I wanted to ask is, I find it remarkably strange that out of this panel of 3 gamers all of whom have played on the Xbox platform for an excess of 20 years, none of us have either Gears of War E-Day or Halo Combat Evolved on this list. And I throw it out for anybody who wants to put words to that, to an explanation for that.
I'll start. I think I will probably play Halo eventually. The announcements of the extra couple levels are interesting. Whether that's enough to kind of move a needle of what is basically a remake of Halo Combat Evolved. I enjoy that story. I enjoy that universe. I've have plenty of comics and novels, and so I'm actually, in some ways, I'm less interested in the Sergeant Johnson levels and the prequel kind of levels, because I've read through the 3 Troy Denning Master Chief books from the last 5 years that kind of hit before Halo Reach and go into all kinds of other things, or hit before Halo Combat Evolved. So I love that world. I actually like the fiction more than the games most of the time. And I think in terms of Gears, for me, I'm curious to see what it does. I also I'm gonna be in a little corner over here saying I kind of liked the direction they went with Gears 5 and kind of resetting to ground it back earlier. Is, again, I think there's fiction out there that hits on that, so I'll be curious to see what it is. But it also wasn't anything, because they're known properties and kind of known time frames. It didn't really rise to my level of excitement.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I was never a huge Gears fan. Like, I played the first one and beat it, even though it took me like, I don't know, like 6 years to beat the first one. It was like a 6-year span from when I started playing it before I actually beat the game, even though I think I left off on literally the last level, like right before the boss. Yeah, so that one's like, it's like, okay, looks cool. I was, even though I'm not a Gears fan, but when I was watching the trailer, like the first part of it, when they're showing them like just in the street, like literally when, what do they call the locusts? Like, I don't even remember what they're called. They started coming up out of the ground. That was kind of interesting. But then it just kind of turned into Gears after that. Like, everybody was in like the big armor, and like, okay, like it's just the same thing to me. Then as far as Halo, it's just like another, like, okay, there's extra levels, and it's another retelling of, another remaster of the first one, even though it's just a campaign. Like, for me, Halo was always the multiplayer anyways. So, and I enjoyed the story itself, but to me, it was like always just multiplayer, and that's what I wanted to play. And there's no multiplayer, so like, it's okay. Like, that's all it is for me. And I'm sorry, was there a third game you had mentioned?
No, just those 2.
Yeah.
Just
Just
for
2,
now.
right? Okay.
So, Game Logic, I want to turn that question back on you. Is you don't have them on this list either?
Yeah, and really my big takeaway from the show is I realize during the show that what I was really interested in was where Xbox is going that's new. Combat Evolved, we've all played that story, I don't know how many times. Remade for PC, remade for Halo Master Chief Collection, play it again before Halo Infinite comes out. I'm like, I don't know that I need to play it again. And so, there's nothing. I mean, I have had no interest in Combat Evolved since the first time it landed. In Gears of War, but what I wanted to see was, are they doing anything to like move it beyond the past framework? And like, there's some very, very, very small updates in terms of combat movement. Like you see Marcus like being able to mantle from the grocery store, the top of the grocery store freezer aisle to the other grocery store freezer aisle. Yeah, but other than that, like you said, Tao, it was Gears of War, and like literally that opening scene where they start moving down the street and there's like the car, like literally I can see that level and that scene in my mind from replaying Gears of War. Where you right before you get like the big Jeep and you get into that set piece where you're like driving in the Jeep with the rear gunner, you're literally moving down like almost, it looks like exactly that same street. And I'm like, I don't need to replay these things. And so this to me is becoming the conversation of Xbox is like, what are the games doing to move forward? Because Forza Horizon 6 doesn't move forward. Gears of War E-Day looks like it doesn't move forward. Halo Combat Evo. So it's great that they're doing stuff for people for their 25-year anniversary. But like the people who are still on the platform, like have played all that stuff for 25 years. And it's great that they're doing fan service, but they have a huge number of people who have defected and left that platform and are looking for things to move forward. So I didn't have any interest in either of those, but I do have lots of other things on here.
Well, let's jump into another big name first party title that got delayed, moving into February, which is Playground Games' Fable.
Yeah, we got a date, February 23rd, 2027. And the first thing I'll say that, kind of pulled me over there, because I didn't play the original Fable games. I have little interest in them. They're kind of one of those games that to me is too big. And I'm like, I don't have time to be bothered. But again, we're talking about star power tonight. Like Haley Atwell, absolutely one of my favorite actresses, right, to come out of the MCU. Like everything that she does, I'm just like, oh, like she's great in my opinion. And I see her show up here and I'm like, holy cow, my mind is blown. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play this game. I'm super interested in her voice acting performance as the villain in this game. I think it adds a huge amount of gravitas to the cast. Super interested, like for simply that factor, it just like totally flipped me over the fence from where I was with this game. So looking forward to it.
Well, stay on the mic because you've got a couple others here that you can talk through.
Yeah, and I mean, so I did mention that I have other things on this list. They are not necessarily things that I will play on Xbox. Metroid 2039, I'm absolutely playing on PC. When I say on PC, I do mean through Steam, right, or the Epic Game Store. I've obviously been a big fan of the Metro series since the beginning of time, and I will continue. It's a little rough for me to ground myself on what exactly is going on with the lore here. I know that there is a faction in the Metro of a fascist regime rising up, as you would kind of expect to happen in like this post-apocalyptic world. But of course, in Metro Exodus, they move out of the tunnels, so I can't tell. And this is forward progress, right? It's 2039, so I'm not sure what happens. This to me was a faction that lived in the tunnels, right, and kind of rose to power in the tunnels. So I'm not sure where it goes from there, or how they find their feet now that people are moving out of the tunnels. But for that reason, I'm super interested. Obviously, this game looks gorgeous. Like, there's a handful of studios that when you talk about environmental detail, and pushing the envelope of graphics technology, we saw one, Shift Up, is starting to do that, right, with the Stellar Blade series. I often talk about what Massive Entertainment does with the Snowdrop engine. And this is now, 4A has been one of the ones for a very long time. Like, they just do not look to compromise, right, in pushing the game engine.
No, they've always been, kind of PC heavy in terms of pushing graphics forward.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense, right? Because some of them come from Crytek, right? So this is a studio that was made from former developers from Crytek and people who left GSC Game World when it originally closed back in 2010, I think. Before GSC Game Company World obviously came back, I won't go through the whole history tonight. But there was a mass exodus when the studio first closed in its first incarnation, and a lot of them became a large part of this team here. So yeah, looking super forward to this.
Nice. The next game that I'm surprised is not on Tao's list because he's played the others, but we get Senua. right? The next game within the Hellblade series.
Yeah, there's talk from the developers that this is this is not Hellblade 3. Look, it's going to be called Hellblade 3 by me until it's proved, until they prove to me that it's something different. There's a lot of discussion that it's like more active combat, that it's more of an action and adventure. And I'm like, okay, guys, this is literally the same thing that you said for Hellblade 2. So, when you prove to me that it's something different, then I'll believe it. Regardless, I am interested in it. Just to see the continuation of the Senua. Again, we're talking about star power tonight. She's not Hollywood, but this actress has won best performance for both instances of Hellblade. I don't know that she swept the 5 big awards, but I'm pretty sure she got voted for best performance, particularly for the second game, in at least maybe 3 out of the 5. So I will be very interested to see how this game goes. But I was just thinking the other day how there was all this big hoopla about how they moved mocap forward and graphical fidelity for Hellblade 2, and I was like, okay, but the whole thing was supposedly the money was being spent so that the other studios could benefit from that, and I'm like, I don't see the other studios incorporating that at all. But if Ninja Theory can at least reuse it and really make a great looking game again, then I'll be there for it. So I'm interested to play this. Don't know that I'll play this on Xbox. Hellblade 2 I played on PC. It's
this definitely feels like you're going to want your most powerful graphical performance, because it is always, again, just like Metro, is always pushed in the mocap and a variety of other places. Okay, so a new one, I think it was new. I don't remember it being announced before, which was Valor Mortis.
Yeah, this is in kind of Napoleon times. Yeah, you're the soldier, I think, that comes back from the dead, or you have some kind of supernatural powers. But yeah, this looked pretty interesting. Just going back to Senua for a second, the reasons that you mentioned, you weren't sure what it's going to be. That's why I didn't put it on my list. I was like, I'm not going to be burned a second time, so we'll see. I was pretty disappointed in the second one. Oddly enough, the first one was gameplay that was pretty simplistic, and it was even more simplistic somehow in the second one. They just, I don't know. But I'm looking forward. I'll take a look at it though and see how it pans out once it comes out. If the fighting's a little bit better, that's basically kind of just turned me off the second one. So Valor Mortis, it looks like it's action, but maybe Souls-like. I've seen some reports, but didn't really seem Souls-like to me. In some of the, I don't know if they're just saying that because of all the parrying and stuff, but I don't know if it's going to be as punishing, as other Souls games. But definitely, it looks interesting. Something, I just wasn't expecting, I guess, from Xbox. So something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and this is not a. There's so many things that showed up and made this a publisher showcase. Cause this is a multi-platform game, not from a Xbox first-party studio, right? So, this is I can't remember who this is from. Focus Entertainment, I think. Again, star power again. Vincent Castle as Napoleon. So, this is yeah. Well, it only listed those 3. I swore it was going to other platforms as well. But at any rate, yeah, good looking game. Historical fiction, grounded in realistic history. So that's the main reason it caught my eye.
Nice. And then we got a lot more detail and a date around Clockwork Revolution, which was announced, I think, last year's showcase. And we get more of a sense of what the game actually is. Definitely seems like it has some Dishonored vibes to it a little bit. Well, Game Logic, you've got it flagged here, so I'll let you take over.
Yeah, this has been announced for some time. 2022, I think, maybe was when it was announced. It's shown up several times at a few showcases, including last year. It is being likened much more so to BioShock than Dishonored. And then the devs are from one of my favorite games, Arcanum of Magic Obscura, which was an old isometric RPG from early in the 2000s. But we saw a lot more of kind of the background and the setup. We knew about kind of the time shifting stuff, but we didn't really understand what the setup is. And so we saw a lot more of that here, that he's thrown back in time. This is the first time I think that I can recall that it's really presented that you have like a crew, which is kind of interesting because I don't know how they figure into the whole thing. I don't know whether or not you're going to have squad controls for this. I don't know if you're going to be able to select who goes with you on certain missions. I've never seen the expansion of the cast. Like there's always been like one or two people shown as just kind of like companions, but this is the first thing I've ever seen like this array of like 6 people, in the BioShock Avengers. And I don't know how they figure into the gameplay. But the characterization is great. So, and like I said, we saw much more of the time travel mechanic. The time travel mechanic has been presented before as like a combat mechanic, like you could rewind time, and play through a combat sequence again. But this is the first time that it was like, has you cast like 20 or 30 years or whatever in the past, and then you roll back forward with like new technology and stuff like that. So it's gotten more and more interesting. This is one of the games that was revealed to be an Xbox exclusive. I didn't catch at the end if it said it's still PC, so I don't know if it's a console exclusive.
I think that's the way they framed it, right? Like it's not launching on or not coming to PlayStation 5, basically. Just like Gears Day.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which again kind of makes it curious, the label exclusive, right? And this has been part of the thing with the fan base is they say, bring back exclusives, and they don't really mean bring back exclusives, they just mean don't send it over to PlayStation. Right. So interesting, so it's, you go to the end of the thing and it says console exclusive. So I'm very curious to find out if that means it's not going to Steam, because that would also be a huge thing.
I remember, they have played around with that language for years in terms of what exclusive means, right? And console exclusive historically from Xbox, from my recollection, has always meant that on the console it's exclusive to Xbox.
Right. So, I've often contended, there's no way you don't send it to the store that owns 70 to 85% of the PC market. So
exactly. No, I think that whole trailer looks super interesting. Like they've built out that world in ways that the original tease and even the couple other check-ins that we've had over the years didn't really hook me, but this looks, as you said, it's very BioShocky looking, but has the potential to be really interesting in terms of combat.
There is a Steam page for it, on Steam. So it just says to be announced.
There you go.
Well, there we go. That answers that question.
Yeah, there's no way they're going to pull it back.
Console.
Thanks, Tao.
Or
to fact check
partial
us.
exclusive, I guess. Timed exclusive.
Yeah, it's also super. Like again, I don't. Supposedly they weren't going to talk about strategy at the showcase, and so I wasn't paying. And don't want to talk a lot about the strategy. But it's curious that this is the game that you pull back, because I don't. It's new IP. And I don't feel like it's a big game. Like it's not. To me, it's a little bit bigger than a South of Midnight. Like, but it's not Gears of War, and it's not Halo Infinite. So I'm like, why do you keep it exclusive in 2027? I don't know. And so it makes me feel like it was I'll just get into it. It makes me feel like this whole thing about exclusives was about stopping a revolt amongst their diehard fan base. And it was, let's figure out the absolute minimum we need to do to make some appeasement, right, without actually shifting strategy. And so it was one game in 2026 and one game in 2027. Let's pick the two that we think we're not going to give up a lot of sales on PlayStation 5 anyway. Otherwise, we're going to have to prove to Amy Hood why right, it's okay for us to keep these exclusive. So let's make the reason, because they're not going to sell that much on PlayStation 5 anyway.
But that's exactly what I thought about why Gears wasn't going over, because the numbers that Gears Reloaded or whatever sold on PlayStation was very small. So that one made a whole lot of sense. This one, I also wondered I think your logic makes complete sense. I also wonder about the size of the team and how much time porting would take, given that they've taken enough time already. And that it is the potential of being a new IP for them, but it also is one that it doesn't have nobody was chomping at the bit at PlayStation to get it over to them either. I think is Magician, the Devil's Deal. It looks another one kind of interesting in terms of kind of the setting and the kind of abilities you have by being a magician.
Yeah, I won't spend a lot of time on this one because we're going to push for time where we're past time. But this was another one to me that was very Bioshock looking. In fact, so I was kind of surprised about this, in the portfolio as well. But it looked very interesting. It's first person. Lots of different powers. Again, very Bioshocky. Super interesting just to see how they pull this off, because this person is a magician. Actually, my family and I have been watching Now You See Me. So, definitely in that vein. Obviously, Zatanna also having her miniseries over in DC Comics right now. So, magic is a popular topic. And again, this is first person, but not with kind of standard shooting mechanics, right? So this looks like it's something that's going to innovate, right, and bring something new to the table. So, I'd like to show up for it, and again, hopefully it sticks to landing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to take the setting and everything else. So, Tao, you've got a couple games here as well. Let's start with some DLC with the Doom DLC that was announced.
Yeah, Doom Dark Ages Revelations. Was it DLC? I thought it was like a whole.
Or is it an expansion? What is it?
It's DLC. I mean, it's
Is it DLC? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the Dark Ages. I got to actually get back to it. Probably have to buy it and start over since I don't have Game Pass anymore. But this kind of continues on the. I guess kind of spoils a little bit what happened in the Dark Ages, but you get you have a shield at some point. I think you lose it, and so you get a spear basically. So I was just seeing a little bit here, but just more Doom craziness. I didn't really like the 2019, or was it not 2019? 2016 was the original reboot, I think, right? And then the one after that, Eternal. But the Dark Ages, I actually did like quite a lot. So it kind of just goes back into his lore, Doom guy. So like how you came to be. So yeah, there's the staff right there, the spear. But yeah, that looks good. Beautiful looking game too, just like the Dark Ages. So definitely looking forward to it.
Game Logic, any thoughts here? You had it on your.
No, Tao covered it. It's a game that I rolled credits on over the Christmas break. So DLC expansion, continuing the story. Want to go ahead and get back into it and pick up where I left off.
Nice. Okay, Tao, we got you got two other ones here, so let's hit those.
Yeah, first one is Resonance Plague Tale Legacy. So it's the Plague Tale series. I know the first one, at least for sure, Plague Tale Innocence, was more of a stealth game. I'm not too sure if the second one, I think I had some stealth elements. I don't know if you could fight in that one, but this one is like full-on combat in this one. This is a prequel, kind of offshoot tale of Tales. So you play as this woman, Sophia, I believe is her name. Yeah, Sophia, which I believe is in the second game. So kind of a prequel to, I guess, the second game. I don't know if it's in between the first two games, I guess. But yeah, a lot more combat, obviously, as you see here with her swords and daggers. But yeah, it looks, once again, a lot of the games, like 3D games, they've just been like gorgeous, like from all like studios. So as we mentioned with Raj, excuse me, and a lot of PlayStation games and stuff. But this is still in that same vein. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one. And then Minecraft Dungeons 2. which is coming out September 29th. Plague Tale's coming out August 27th, so a couple of later releases here in the year. But yeah, Minecraft Dungeons 2, just kind of same thing, kind of Diablo light as the first one was, but this one looks a little bit more, looks faster, like a little more frenetic. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one. You go in there with, I think you can do up to 4. I always did max. I did on the first game was 3, so
I think it does go up to 4.
Yeah, 4 players.
Yeah, I enjoyed the first game as well, and it's nice that they're continuing on. It's a great kind of family-friendly Diablo-like.
Yeah, just going around getting, defeating the mobs and getting stuff from them as they drop. So looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and that's coming to Switch as well, or Switch 2.
Switch 2, yep. So probably picking on that.
All right. Well, just a quick hit here that we got a date for Belmont's Curse coming in October, the Castlevania game that was announced. And since we started the game with an Insomniac game, started the show with an Insomniac game, let's wrap up the show with a Insomniac Legacy franchise, which is now owned by Activision and Microsoft, which is Spyro: A Realm Beyond. So it had been rumored that Toys for Bob, which did the Skylander series, Toys for Bob was kind of bought themselves out of Activision and became an independent studio. But it's been rumored that they were working on a Spyro game. They worked on and did the Crash Bandicoot 4 and the Crash Bandicoot remasters. And so now we get a brand new Spyro game, which looks beautiful. Just a kind of fun platformer 3D action game. So it's coming sometime in 2027. For all the kind of dark, gloomy, it was a nice kind of piece of brightness within the showcase here, and I'm very curious to see what happens with it. That kind of wraps up our Xbox showcase. Gentlemen, any final thoughts on the Xbox show or the week in general?
I do. I mean, it's a good segue into Soldier's question. So Soldier asks, what exclusive games sells more, Wolverine on PlayStation or Gears ED on Xbox? And I thought this was a good opportunity to talk about something that I just realized. So remember earlier I was saying, but this game was going to like these other platforms, and then I looked at the trailer and I'm like, but okay, I swore this thing. So on Xbox Wire, which is where I looked up, a lot of information before the thing, I am absolutely certain without question that on the first party Xbox Studio games that are going to Steam and PlayStation 5, that the text above the video called those other platforms out. Without question, I'm absolutely certain of that when I look this stuff up. I'm looking back at it now, and it does not say those things in the text. It says Xbox Series XS, Xbox on PC, Cloud. And then it says, for all of them, it has this link that says see developer website for other platforms. That is an edit and an update from what was originally posted on Xbox Wire.
Yes, right. And that goes back to last week's kind of social media uproar around the exclusivity and, having Ashishama reply to
showing other platforms names during the showcase.
It was such an uproar in the community, right? Yeah.
And it was funny because Ryan McCaffrey tweeted out, hey, you should do the same thing that PlayStation 5 does. And I'm like, so look, I don't particularly feel like what PlayStation does. And when people argues that, PlayStation shows games, presents that they're only coming to its own platform, but the reality is when you go and check it, right, they're coming to other platforms. I think that's neither here nor there. Like, I don't really care. Like, I look up where games are going and I decide where I'm going to play them, and I seek to play them on wherever I think they're going to play best. Like, if you tell me Metro 2039 is only coming to PlayStation, I know that it's also coming to PC, and I'm going to buy it on PC. What you say during the showcase doesn't matter to me. Yeah. So this whole thing of like, it's good to obfuscate. Like, I don't think it's good or bad. So it's super weird. It's funny that when I look at the Fable trailer still has Xbox Cloud, Steam, and PlayStation 5. But I feel relatively certain for some of these multi-platform games that are actually coming to other platforms that they said during the show they were going to other platforms, but now at the end of those trailers they just say Xbox Series, Xbox Cloud, and Xbox on PC. So yeah, it's interesting. Any your guys' thoughts on Soldier's questions?
To me, it's not even a toss up. Like, it is Marvel's Wolverine, in part because of the PlayStation install base, and in part because of the kind of IP itself. That I think that is going to sell bigger, even though E-Day is coming to Steam. I think Gears at this point is a smaller franchise, and it would be a great sign of health for Microsoft if Gears sells more than Wolverine. But I'll be surprised if that happens.
Yeah, that'd be the upset of the century, I think, if that happens. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Wolverine's probably gonna take that contest there. And then just kind of overall, I mean, I was kind of like Game Logic mentioned at the beginning, before we started on Xbox, like, it's, a lot of the same old. Like, we get Halo, we have, E-Day. Okay, it's a prequel, but still, it's Gears. We have all this other stuff. There's a few, games sprinkled in there, and I was just like, the stuff I was kind of excited for. Like, I didn't even mention Fable and stuff because it's all next year. It's like, okay, like, we've seen a lot of these games now for like 3, 4, 5 years, and it's like, come on, like, got to start getting some of these games out. Like, let's get going. So I was a little kind of meh on the showcase, and overall just on everything. There was a lot of games, like a ton of games. Like, every year I think we just keep seeing the games increase as far as what they're showing, and even some of the showcases. But it's good. There's a lot of stuff out there to play, and a lot of different things. So I think overall it was a good year for what was announced.
Yeah, at the beginning of Summer Game Fest, Keighley announced, showed a stat, and he showed like 9,300 games already published on Steam this year, which, the crowd clap for, people act like it's a good news story. It's not a good news story. I keep saying a key part of the problem that's going on with the series is it's over inventory. Like, there's too many games being made. There's not enough people to buy them. And then we don't understand why studios close, right? And why there are layoffs. I'm like, it's partly because there's an oversupply. And yeah, last thing I'll mention, interesting thread poll. So I did go to Valor Mortis, the Wikipedia page, and they show the games coming to PlayStation 5, Windows, and Xbox Series X, S. So I definitely feel like there was something changed. There's been things changed since the showcase, which, I get it. Like, they're doing things to placate the diehard user base, but I don't necessarily feel like that was the best thing or smart thing to do. Just kind of convinces me that we're back into the playing shenanigans, right, with that marketing team and PR, rather than focusing on, making great video games and getting them out, to people. So,
yeah, I think it's surprising the amount that they feel, or at least certain aspects feel, that they need to be responsive on social media to segments of the fan base, especially when there's so much else going on. Yeah. We'll see. And we will have plenty to talk about, as usually what usually happens. And one of the things I even noticed, usually we end up with other game announcements and kind of news updates and things like that kind of trickle out, or that were embargoed and kind of come out over the course of the next week. So by the time we hit next week's show, we'll have more news stories to talk about. Just this afternoon, I saw that El Paso Elsewhere is getting a sequel. So El Paso Elsewhere 2 from Strange Scaffold, which I didn't see in any of the showcases, or even in the Strange Scaffold sponsored the Frosty Game Showcase from New Zealand and Australia. I never saw that. So I would guess we'll have plenty more to talk about next week, as we are back, as we are every week, on Enough to Keep Going every Sunday evening, coming to you at 8 Eastern. Tonight we came with a supersized show, so we started a little early, and wrapping up just a little late, but not too bad considering we had almost a week's worth of news and games to go through. Master, you will be in the host chair. Game Logic, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got one last alibi. So yes, Tal, you are right about Valor Mortis. It is Souls-like. That is as reported by the developer themselves. So note that is coming off my list. And yeah, and I mentioned, it said multiple platforms on the wiki page, but I wanted to confirm it on the publisher website. And on the publisher website, it does actually have links to where to wishlist it for Steam and PlayStation.
Nice. Yes. Here on the Enough to Keep Going podcast, we fact check ourselves just so you don't have to. But again, I always appreciate when people in chat keep us honest as well. For everybody that came through in chat, Henry Heck, Soldier for Life, Hero Down Under, always glad to have you all here. Always appreciate the conversations and the community that is the Enough to Keep Going podcast. For myself, DBQ Hams, Game Logic, and Master, this has been episode 435 for June 7th. We'll see you all 436. We'll see you all next week. But until then, catch up on all those games. Watch some showcases. Appreciate the variety that is out there. And play the games you love. Love those you play with. And be kind to yourself. Good night, everybody.